I still remember the smell of disinfectant. Hospitals have a way of stripping you down to your smallest self. The white walls, the beeping machines, the silence between footsteps. When you're lying there, waiting for a diagnosis that could split your life in two, you don't think about money or pride or revenge. You think about one thing: family. My name is Ethan Miller, and the day the doctor said the word cancer, I looked at my parents before I looked at anyone else. I wish I hadn't. They didn't cry. They didn't panic. They didn't even ask questions. My mother stared at the floor like she was calculating expenses. My father crossed his arms and sighed, as if I had just told him my car needed repairs. Stage 2. Aggressive. Treatment needed immediately. The doctor kept talking, but I stopped listening. I was waiting for something, anything from the two people who raised me. Support, fear, anger, love. Instead, my father asked, "How long will this take?" The doctor answered carefully, "Months, possibly longer." My father nodded slowly. Then he said something that still echoes in my head. "That's inconvenient." At first, I told myself they were in shock. People react differently, right? I was wrong. Within a week, everything changed. They stopped coming to the hospital, stopped answering my calls, stopped asking how I felt. When I finally confronted them, my mother said, "You're an adult, Ethan. You'll figure it out. Figure it out." With tubes in my arm, with nausea tearing me apart, with fear sitting on my chest every night, I asked my father directly, "Are you really leaving?" He didn't look at me when he replied, "We can't put our lives on hold for this." That was the moment I understood something terrifying. To them, my cancer wasn't a tragedy. It was an inconvenience. Treatment was brutal. Chemotherapy doesn't just attack cancer, it attacks you. My hair fell out in clumps. Food tasted like metal. Some days, lifting my head felt impossible. Other patients had visitors, flowers, laughter. I had silence. Nurses learned my name quickly. They noticed no one ever came. One of them asked gently, "Family coming today?" I shook my head. She stopped asking after that. The bills piled up fast. Insurance covered some. Not all. I called my parents once more. Just once. "I don't need much," I said quietly. "Just help until I'm stable." There was a pause on the line. Then my father said, "We've already done enough for you in this life." The call ended, and so did something inside me. I won't lie and say I became strong overnight. I cried. I broke down. I stared at the ceiling and wondered if dying would be easier than fighting alone. But somewhere between the pain and the loneliness, something else grew. Clarity. I realized I had spent my whole life trying to earn love from people who only valued usefulness. As long as I was healthy, quiet, and convenient, I mattered. The moment I needed them, I was disposable. That truth hurt more than the cancer. Months passed. I fought, not because I was hopeful, but because I was stubborn. I survived surgeries, side effects, nights when my hands shook so badly I couldn't hold a glass of water. And slowly, I stabilized. Not healed, but alive. That's when my father called, out of nowhere. No apology, no concern, just his voice, cold and familiar. "So," he said, "we heard you're doing better." I said nothing. He cleared his throat. "We think it's time you start taking responsibility again." I smiled for the first time in months, because in my head, 4 words were already forming. 4 words that would end this conversation forever. 4 words he wasn't ready to hear. I didn't answer my father right away. The phone stayed in my hand, vibrating softly, like it was unsure whether it deserved my attention. For years, I had trained myself to respond instantly. A missed call meant punishment. Silence meant disrespect. That habit didn't disappear just because I got sick, but this time, I let it ring. When I finally spoke, my voice surprised even me. "Responsibility for what?" I asked. There was a pause. "For your life," he said, irritated. "You can't expect us to carry you forever." I almost laughed. Carry me. They hadn't carried anything. Not the hospital nights, not the fear, not the chemo, not the bills. I carried myself. "You walked away," I said calmly. "Remember?" My father exhaled sharply. "We didn't walk away. We stepped back. You were too emotional to see it. Emotional, a word people use when they don't want to admit guilt. He continued, now that you're improving, you should move back home. Get back on track. We can't have people thinking we abandoned you. There it was. Not concern. Image. I leaned back against the hospital wall, watching another patient shuffle past with an IV stand. I'm not coming back, I said. Silence. Then disbelief. Excuse me? I said no. My hands weren't shaking. That was new. My mother picked up the extension. Ethan, she said softly, like she hadn't ignored my calls for months. You're still weak. You need family. I closed my eyes. No, I replied. I needed family. Past tense. They didn't yell. They guilted. They reminded me of everything they'd done. Food, shelter, education. Things parents are legally required to provide sold to me as sacrifices. I listened, and for the first time, I didn't absorb it. After the call, I walked to the mirror in the bathroom. My reflection barely looked like me. Thin, pale, scarred. But my eyes were clear. I wasn't fighting to be loved anymore. I was fighting to be free. Recovery was slow. Physical therapy. Follow-ups. Scans that made my chest tighten every time the results were delayed. But something had changed. People at the hospital noticed it before I did. You're different, a nurse said once. Stronger, I nodded. Not stronger, detached. I found a small apartment with help from a cancer support foundation. Nothing fancy, just quiet. Just mine. No voices telling me what I owed. No expectations. I rebuilt piece by piece. Weeks later, my father showed up unannounced. I opened the door and almost didn't recognize him. He looked older, tired, nervous. That alone told me everything. You look better, he said awkwardly. I stepped aside but didn't invite him in. What do you want? I asked. He hesitated, then said, we've been worried. I waited. No apology came. You hurt us, he continued, by shutting us out. I smiled faintly. You left, I said. I just locked the door. He tried one last angle. You're nothing without family, he said. You'll regret this. That was when the 4 words finally left my mouth. Calm. Even. Unshaking. I survived without you. He froze. Actually froze. His mouth opened. Closed. No rebuttal. No lecture. No control. Just silence. He left without another word, and I sat down on the floor. Not shaking. Not crying. Just breathing. Because something irreversible had happened. The person who abandoned me had lost the right to define me. I survived without you. The words didn't echo. They settled. I didn't realize how heavy they were until days later, when my phone started lighting up, not with concern, but with confusion. Missed calls, short messages, long pauses between replies. My parents had never been confused by me before. They had always known where I was supposed to stand. Now they didn't. My father didn't call again for a week. When he did, his voice sounded different, less sharp, less certain. We should talk, he said. I looked at the message, then put the phone face down. I'd spent months fighting for survival. I wasn't going to spend my recovery explaining myself. Life after treatment is strange. People think once the doctors say stable, everything goes back to normal. It doesn't. Your body remembers, your mind remembers, and your priorities change permanently. I stopped chasing comfort and started protecting peace. Word travels in small ways. A nurse I befriended mentioned my situation to a social worker. A social worker mentioned it to a community coordinator. Suddenly, I had support, real support from strangers who expected nothing in return. That contrast hurt. Strangers showed up. My parents didn't. My mother tried next. Her message was longer, softer. We were scared, Ethan. You don't understand how hard it was for us. I read it twice. Then I typed a response. I was scared too. I was just alone. I didn't send anything else. I didn't need to. A month later, something unexpected happened. My father's business partner, someone I barely knew, called me. I don't want to intrude, he said carefully, but your dad's been distracted. I waited. He mentioned you, the man continued. Said you've been ungrateful. I smiled. Of course he did. Control looks like concern when it's losing power. I didn't correct the man. I didn't defend myself. I let time do what it always does. Reveal patterns. My parents started showing up where they hadn't before. Extended family gatherings. Community events. Places where people remembered my absence during my illness. Questions followed. How's Ethan doing? We didn't see you at the hospital. Wasn't he alone? My parents smiled, changed the subject. But once a seed is planted, it doesn't need help to grow. My health improved steadily. I gained weight, strength, color. With health came confidence, and with confidence came opportunity. A former colleague reached out. Then another. Work I could do remotely. At my pace. I didn't rush. Survival taught me patience. One afternoon, my father showed up again. This time, he didn't knock. He just stood there when I opened the door. I'm losing respect, he said bluntly. People are asking questions. There it was. The truth. Then answer them honestly, I replied. He stared at me. You want to punish us? He asked. I shook my head. No, I said. I want distance. He scoffed. You think you're better than us now? I met his eyes. I think I'm done being smaller. That ended the conversation. That night, I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, not afraid, not angry, just aware. I had crossed a line that couldn't be uncrossed. They couldn't pull me back. They couldn't rewrite this chapter. And for the first time since my diagnosis, I slept without fear. Because silence, when chosen, is power. I didn't plan for it to happen in public. Life just has a way of dragging the truth into the light when lies get tired. It happened at a community fundraiser, one of those polished events my parents never missed. Appearances mattered to them more than anything. Reputation was their oxygen. I almost didn't go, but a friend from the hospital had invited me. Said it would be good to be seen alive. That line stuck with me, so I went. The room buzzed with polite laughter and shallow conversations. People who liked the idea of generosity more than the practice of it. And then I saw them. My parents, standing near the center of the room, smiling, shaking hands, telling a story they'd perfected. I stayed near the edge, watching, listening. My father was talking loudly to a small group. Family is everything, he said, hand over his heart. We sacrificed so much for our son during his illness. I felt something tighten in my chest. Not rage, Hesolvi. Someone noticed me first. A woman from the foundation that helped me pay for treatment. Ethan, she said, surprised. You're here. Heads turned. My father's smile froze. My mother's face drained of color. For a second, no one spoke. Then the woman continued, unaware. Innocent. We were so worried about you when you were alone during treatment, she said warmly. It's wonderful to see how far you've come. Alone. The word landed like a dropped glass. The group my father had been speaking to went quiet. Someone asked gently, Alone? I didn't speak. I didn't have to. The woman filled the silence naturally. Yes, she said. He didn't have family support, but he was incredibly strong. Every eye shifted to my parents. My father opened his mouth, closed it. My mother reached for her drink with shaking hands. I stepped forward then, not angry. Not dramatic, just present. Hi, I said calmly. People moved aside instinctively, creating space. I looked at my parents. They looked small. Not because I'd grown bigger, but because the truth was standing next to them. My father cleared his throat. There's been a misunderstanding, he said quickly. We were involved, just not publicly. I tilted my head slightly. No, I said evenly. You weren't. Gasps followed. Not loud. Controlled. The worst kind. My mother whispered, Ethan, please, please. The word came months too late. I'm not here to fight, I said to the room. I'm here because I survived. Silence wrapped around us. I continued. I went through cancer treatment without my parents. Not because they couldn't help, because they chose not to. No embellishment, no emotion, just fact. Someone asked quietly, Is that true? My father's face reddened. This is inappropriate, he snapped. He's emotional. I smiled faintly. I was emotional when I was sick, I replied. This is clarity. That was it. The image cracked. People didn't argue. They didn't accuse. They simply saw. And once people see something clearly, it can't be unseen. My parents left early. No goodbyes. No explanations. Just retreat. Later that night, my phone rang. My father. He let it ring. Then stop. Then ring again. Finally, I answered. What do you want? I asked. His voice was strained, panicked. You humiliated us, he said. I leaned back, staring at the ceiling. No, I replied. You humiliated yourselves. I just stopped covering for you. You think people will side with you? He snapped. I don't care, I said. That's the difference. Silence followed, then something I never expected. Regret, not for leaving me, but for being exposed. My mother texted later. We did what we thought was best. I typed back slowly. You did what was easiest. And for the first time, I didn't feel the need to say more. That night, I realized something important. They had lost control not because I fought them, but because I no longer needed them to understand me. Their power depended on my silence, and I had finally chosen when to speak. The hall emptied slowly. Music faded. Laughter thinned into echoes. Chairs scraped the floor as guests drifted toward their cars, carrying stories they would retell with lowered voices and raised eyebrows. I stayed. Not because I owed anyone anything, but because I wanted to feel the end of it. My parents sat alone at the table they once ruled. No audience, no authority, no script left to perform. My father stared at his hands as if they'd betrayed him. My mother kept smoothing her dress, the way people do when they don't know what else to hold together. I didn't feel triumph. I felt release. The bride's father found me near the exit again. You handled that with restraint, he said. Most people would have burned the room. I shook my head. Fire leaves ash, I replied. I wanted space, he smiled. Come Monday, we'll talk about what's next. I nodded. We shook hands not as mentor and student, but as equals. I walked outside. Night air cooled my face. City lights hummed softly, indifferent to the drama they'd just witnessed. Behind me, my parents followed, slow, hesitant. Ethan, my mother said. I stopped, but I didn't turn. We didn't know, she continued, about your work, your life. I faced them then. You knew everything you wanted to know, I said calmly. Everything that kept you comfortable. My father swallowed. You think this makes you better than us? He snapped. I considered the question. No, I answered. It makes me free. He stepped closer, voice cracking. You wouldn't be anything without us. I met his eyes steady, unafraid. That's the last lie you get to tell about me, I said. Silence followed. Not the tense kind, the final kind. Weeks passed. Monday came and went. Then Tuesday. Then months. My life moved forward without asking permission. I didn't erase my parents from my memory, but I removed them from my decisions. Distance isn't cruelty, it's clarity. Word traveled the way. Truth always does. Quietly, accurately, permanently. My parents' circle thinned. Invitations slowed. Respect cooled. Not because I attacked them, because people finally saw them. And once seen, they couldn't hide behind me anymore. I built what came next carefully. Not to prove anything, but to protect it. New projects, new partners, new boundaries. The work grew. The noise didn't. Success tastes better when no one's watching you eat it. One evening, months later, my mother sent a message. We miss you. I read it once. Then, I put my phone down. Missing someone isn't the same as respecting them. I moved into a place with light. Big windows. Clean lines. Silence that didn't judge me. On one wall, I framed nothing. No certificates. No awards. No proof. I didn't need reminders anymore. Sometimes, I think about the boy who cleaned floors before sunrise. The one who learned to lower his eyes and raise his endurance. He didn't dream of revenge. He dreamed of escape. And that dream came true, not loudly, not dramatically, but completely. The wedding became a story people still tell. Not about drama, about recognition. About the moment a son wasn't a servant anymore, because he never was. I didn't win by humiliating my parents. I won by refusing to belong to their version of me, by choosing silence over shouting, distance over destruction, truth over permission. Today, when someone asks who raised me, I answer honestly, I raised myself, I say. And that's the only lineage I need.